the following so that at least I can do a bit of prep. Yeah, this is for you. So cool. I think recording started. So I'm just going to kick off, Paul. I'm just going to go through, again, what I said, reference architecture of how all the products can come together. So you guys are familiar with some of these already. So obviously we've got the CMS. It's all hosted in Azure, multi-site. We've got commerce. I'm referring to the B2C. Now we have the B2B software that's available, which is a completely...
So if anyone wants to jump in with questions, please do. The idea of this is for you to ask Nicola questions of things that you may have seen or heard of. So please feel free to jump in or maybe put on the chat or something so Nicola can look at them as well.
Yes, cool. So as I was saying, so you guys have done B2C commerce. We now have B2B, so completely different software, completely different application. It's SaaS. You can host it your own, but there's only been one instance of that in this region. So for everything else, it's a SaaS solution. It comes with a PIM. So PIM is almost like a standalone product that now can be connected to B2C. So what that means is, traditionally with their B2C commerce, you either would custom build the product information as part of commerce. You extend it with, the product detail page with the different properties. But obviously with the PIM that came with the B2B, that can now be connected to the B2C. So if you have any PIM requirements, that's now available on the platform.
So that's available for just B2C customers as well. Okay. Oh, that would be interesting for another session, Nicola.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this has been a lot of the problem right now with our commerce customers is that it's very coupled, the catalog as well as the product information. Yeah. So an Adairs, for example, where all the product information are in the catalog. So if they were to migrate that to the DXP commerce, it's hard. They can't just import from the ERP directly into the new commerce because the product information lives in the old commerce. So if they had a PIM, it would have been an easy import from ERP and then import product information from the PIM. So we obviously everyone knows about EpiFind. We're now calling it search and navigation. And also we have community API for user-generated content. So this is something that can compete with the likes of FIFO, Bazaarvoice, but the difference in FIFO and Bazaarvoice is it's a SaaS, full-blown SaaS product, which means you have a user interface, you can moderate as an editor, whereas community API is really just a bunch of microservices. Has anyone used the community API before?
Is that the old one?
It's what it used to be called social API.
Okay, but this can do comments and stuff like that. Can you do likes as well?
Correct. Yes. So again, we can do a complete session for this as well. But yeah, ratings, reviews, comments, forums, groups, activity streams. So it's almost like a Yahoo.
We have a team. I mean, they also joined the meeting today in StillMac website and already live.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it just means that you don't have a UI ready for it. So you'll have to build the user interface for it, and the backend is where you can use the community API to store those entities that I mentioned.
So that's the old Relate, I guess. Do you know?
Good question. I'm battling.
Yeah, sounds like it, Sophia.
So, yeah, where Andreas used to work, that company.
Yeah. So we used this for one of the big universities. No, Active Moreland, I think it was a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that Sarah and Sophia, Relate, because you guys have been in Epi for a long time. Yeah. But to answer the question, Community API is a different product. It's not a rename. So Social API is the same as Community API. It was a rename, but Relate was the predecessor product. And so anyone who's on Relate, and I know of one right now that's still on Relate, and they are having to migrate it to Community API because Relate is no longer supported. It was deprecated back in 2014.
Okay, so this is a different product.
Correct. Yes.
That is built by Episerver, or is that a acquired product as well?
It's built by Episerver, not acquired.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I should actually say Optimizely now, by the way, because we have a swear jar in the office.
But do you know the cost? How Episerver cost the community APIs?
Good question. That I don't know. But yeah, I can share that detail with you after this. Yeah, so we have one of our existing customers who are already on the CMS have actually evaluated vendors who can do their internal. It's almost like it's not a Yammer. It's like an internal a portal for their members where they can add comments, they can create forum pages, they can moderate, and they can create groups. And so this is one of the products that they are evaluating at the moment. Cool. So this is one of the latest offerings that we have, which is what we call optimization as a service. The reason why it's called OWASP is you can plug and play the products within it to any CMS or to any platform. So first of all, web experimentation. So you guys are using Google 360, Google Optimize for, I think, Electrolux. I think with Adairs, they were using BWR. So essentially just drop off a JavaScript, and then editors would then go into this user interface and then drag and drop, change the content, and then run experiments. Has anyone seen a demo of the web experimentation product at all?
Is that something in the last meetup, Nicola?
So the last in the dev meetup, so Steve showed the full stack offering. So when we acquired Optimizely, when Episerver acquired Optimizely, Optimizely came with 2 products. The first one is web experimentation. So it's just lightweight JavaScript, and all it does is experiments. But it's a pretty cool experimentation engine. They've got like a stats engine that tells you that whether your results are accurate or not. It also has like algorithms like multi-armed bandit, where you don't set the allocation of the traffic. So for example, you're running 2 variations, right? And you might set 50-50 to start with. And then as soon as it learns which one's winning, it then sends more traffic to it, so you can maximize conversions. It's actually pretty cool. But what we showed in the dev meetup is not the web experimentation. What we showed to you is the full stack offering, which is running experiments server side. Because if you're running it server side, there's no latency, so you don't drop the JavaScript, you don't manipulate the DOM at runtime. You're actually determining all of that in the server side, and then because it's in the server side, you're able to do feature flagging. You can do progressive rollouts. So let's say you're building a feature, and that feature it's not complete yet, right? But you want to check it in anyway. But because it's wrapped in a feature that you haven't enabled, it allows you to do continuous deployments. So you just keep working on your code, just as long as it still builds and it's not complete, you don't want to launch it, just commit it, because it's the feature isn't enabled, it's still going to work. So that's the full stack offering, that's why it is here, because it's next to it's within the code base. And essentially, you would be using our SDK. There's SDKs available for mobile app, for React Native, but obviously the one that Opti will be using, or Episerver, is the .NET SDK or C# SDK. So back to the OWASP, you guys are familiar with IDEO, the content intelligence and recommendations. So again, drop off a JavaScript. So even if you're not on the CMS, even if you're in WordPress or Contentful or whatever, because you drop the JavaScript, what it does is it scrapes the content of your site, all of the content, and it uses natural language processing. Hi, Pele. It uses natural language processing to derive topics automatically for each article. So let's say, and I think Tien Lei, you were involved in the Electrolux when we installed the snippet against the sites. And what it did was it just scraped all the articles, auto tag topics. And because of the data, is then able to say, okay, Sophia is interested in wine storage, or Sarah is interested in other topics. And because of that data, it's enabled to do automatic content recommendations. So instead of showing these are the latest articles, you can go recommended for you articles. And the editors don't need to configure anything. All they do is, hey, show 4 recommendations in this block, or show 6 recommendations. So that's the second product in the OWASP. And then we also have the product recommendations, which is what used to be called Pirius, right? Again, it can be hooked up to any commerce as long as you can export your catalog feed into product recommendations, and then you track the users on the site, it's then able to do same thing as content recommendations, it's able to do on the fly product recommendations. So as an editor, all you need to do is go, okay, for this product recommendations block, I want to show 6 product recommendations or 3, and then you can choose between different algorithms. You can show me products within this catalog you recommend to the user, or show me products that are complementary. So for example, if they add a pair of shoes, recommend a pair of socks. So the different product recommendations algorithms you can choose from. Any questions on the OS or optimization as a service before I proceed?
No.
Okay.
Migration, Nicola, with the change from Pirius to it's a new version. It's the migration of X number of customers like Electrolux and MLA that are already set up on what used to be called.
The product recommendations though is still Pirius. It's the same product. It was just a rename. So anyone who bought Pirius, would be already using product recommendations. I think for this region, there's only one who's using the product recommendations.
I think it's the content intelligence and content recommendations that we did for install.
Yes, yes.
Is there any update in terms of the migrations for those that have already got that already?
I don't think Electrolux actually ended up buying it. They did the trial, but I'm not across what happened after. I don't think they've signed it. So what we've seen is that during the free 3-month trial, we need to push for the customer and get help from the partner to convince the customer to not just trial the intelligence, but they need to trial the recommendations. If they have the recommendations installed and trialed within the 3 months, they see the value of it. But if they don't get the recommendations as part of the trial and they only do the intelligence, they're just like, yeah, that's nice to have. They just see graphs and all that. So if you have a customer that you think that might need content intelligence and recommendations, we would push to also install recommendations as part of the trial so they see the actual value.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think that was the issue that I ran into, is that when we did the trial for EDO, they see, okay, this people interested in like washing machines, but then what? Like, what did they do with that information? So they ended up not going forward with any of those. So yeah, I think it's need to pair with the recommendation engine.
Yeah, exactly. But also when we do the intelligence part, it's also important, obviously, is I'm sure you know, Tien, that identifying what the goal conversions are and what the goals are of installing content intelligence. Like if you know that, hey, your metrics are to more products in the cart, then you need to measure the content recommendations against those conversions, because content intelligence does that for you. It tells you, okay, how many people have been recommended to clicked on it, and then based on those people who clicked on the content recommendations, how many people actually converted. So you can actually prove the ROI of the product.
But Nicola, one of the headaches we have a bit is that like Find and some of these other things, they don't scale. I mean, the number of requests per second, I mean, we can't use it.
Yeah.
So then basically, we don't want to end up in the situation. I mean, now we're starting to talk with a number of customers to replace Episerver Find because it still don't scale.
And you are right. I'm not
and we can't do load testing, and I mean, because it doesn't scale. I mean, the site doesn't scale, and Episerver don't scale out. The limitation is that, oh, you shouldn't use Find. It's like, okay, but we shouldn't use product recommendation, or we shouldn't use, you know, a navigate. What's it called? Personalized find and navigation.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
you can only hit 75 requests per second. Oh, you can tweak it up. It's like, okay, yeah, but we have 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 peaks on StuMac. It's like 20,000 users, and we can only serve 75 requests per second. It doesn't.
Yeah, so
you know.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. The only thing that I saw was that for some customers they were able to increase 75 to 150, but that's on special request. But again, this is something that I think internally a lot of us know that there is issues with Find, and I know that there is a plan right now. What we tell customers and what we see customers do is move to a different search provider. Clever is one of the ones that I've heard where people are moving to, especially for commerce, because some search providers have not just the indexing and the search ranking algorithms, but they also have the ability to do natural language query. So for example, you go search for t-shirts under $50. Find can't do that. It doesn't have that semantic querying capability. So this is one of the things that they are looking at in the market, and I'm not going to be surprised if the move is to buy. But for now, for CMS, I think it works for CMS for okay traffic, but for the ones where you need super high traffic, then I think definitely we can work with, from an infrastructure perspective, increasing the QPS from 75 to 150 and higher. But yeah, for now it's either that or like look at elsewhere.
Yeah. So then I'm kind of, to be honest, like when we do then product recommendation or content intelligence live, how does that scale? How many requests per second can I do on that?
So for content intelligence and recommendations, these are very different infrastructure. So they're standalone SaaS products. So product recommendations, I think this is even on AWS. Content intelligence and Rex, this is now being brought to the ODP. So I'll show you the ODP because the feature state is, and I'll probably proceed, is that content intelligence and Rex go to our ODP because our ODP has predictions in it. So these are all AI based, but for now these are standalone. You can install them, just optimize, and you add value straight away. With regards to the scalability of it, the only thing I can say is that it's on different infrastructure. I haven't heard of any issues with the scalability of it, but would be keen to know if we are across any issues.
I mean, what we really need to see is that, take Adairs as an example. If you were to recommend this functionality, and can they actually take the Linen Lovers campaign and still serve it without any problems or latencies?
The only issue from a performance that I've heard of is search and navigation. I've not heard of these. Okay. And even from an experimentation perspective, we keep hearing that the web experimentation actually is one of the fastest when it comes to A/B testing because of the edge in the CDN, and you can even self-host the JS yourself, so you don't have that latency. Content intelligence and Rex, product Rex, no known performance issues.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll proceed to the email channel. So you guys know there's Campaign, that's our marketing automation product, but that's still hosted out of Germany. So if you're not using Campaign, obviously you know that we have form connectors to different CRMs and marketing automation, so including Salesforce, Dynamics, HubSpot, and Eloqua. And then SMTP service on the cloud, we're using SendGrid if you're a DXP customer, and that's the email channel. If you were to talk about headless or mobile, you know that we've got the content delivery API and the service API for commerce. But back to what I was talking about earlier with regards to full stack, which allows you to run in-app or server-side experiments. You can also do feature flagging and progressive delivery in mobile app. So we've got the SDKs available to wrap your features within feature flags. So you can just launch features not through deployments, but through toggling in a UI. Cool. And so this is where I now will be talking about the ODP. This is what we covered in the dev meetup if you were in the session. The first thing that it does is it harmonizes the data, right? To have that single view of the customer. We know that a customer may engage with content pages, and the customer might have, orders or cart or wish lists. The customer might have, interested in particular content topics, products that they want, or the searches that they perform. How do you bring them all into that one single view of the customer? This is where the ODP comes to place, and I say ODP because it's Optimizely Data Platform, but really it's harmonizing all the data, including first-party data. So if the customer has like their own data warehouses or CRM, and then also we can bring in third-party data. So when Episerver Optimizely have acquired Zeus. Zeus is the old name of the CDP. We bring in, because of the pre-built connectors, we bring in third-party data, including ads, right? How do customers engage with ads that get shown on Facebook? It also includes data from other e-commerce channels, such as WooCommerce or Shopify. So it's actually quite cool with the data harmonization and what it does. But you can obviously ingest data your own as well into ODP. So for you guys who have worked on Profile Store, Insight, Visitor Intelligence, there's a bunch of renames. That is now the old CDP, and we are working on a migration plan for existing customers to migrate them to the ODP. The plan is to have something in place by end of Q4 this year. And then ODP comes with predictions, machine learning. So it's able to predict when is Pele likely to order next, or when am I likely to order next, or when am I likely to visit the site based on the data that it's collected. So it's got a few machine learning models. It's quite cool. And then you can do activations. So you can activate on the email. So if Pele is likely to order in the next 7 days, you should send out an email to the segment. And this is where it's cool because it creates real-time segments. Editors won't need to create their own. So real-time segments include people that are likely to buy, people who are very likely to buy, and people who are extremely likely to buy. And so you can actually send campaign emails to these groups of people. And so you can integrate from the ODP to campaign, for example, or if you have your own marketing automation. But the other cool thing of the ODP is it comes with an email composer. So you can actually compose your email templates within ODP itself. So Tien Lei, the things that you do when it comes to setting up marketing automations, this is something that you can actually do within ODP. We provide ODP sandboxes. So if you guys are interested, we can request an ODP sandbox for Neteco and just have a play and poke around. Another activation would be experiments, right? What if you want to experiment on people who have submitted a form? What is the next best form to display to them? If you're not sure what to display, you want to create a segment in ODP and then use that segment as an audience within experimentation. And if we, the second half of this session will be focused on the feature flagging. So I'll show a bit of that, the concept of audiences in the world of the former Optimizely product suite. The next one is obviously bringing the data back to the CMS as visitor groups. So when you create segments in the ODP, right? And when you create segments here, that means you can leverage data not just from the website, but you can bring in data from search. Let's say I want to personalize on people who have done this search keyword, or people who have added comments, or people who have liked this particular post, or people who are interested in this content topic. Right, so you can create all the segments and bring that back to the website as visitor groups. So visitor groups is not going away. It's still going to be there. It just will have an integration to our ODP, which is quite cool. Whoops. And then the last one is mobile. So ODP has one of the activations available is a push on a mobile app. So it's able to trigger a notification on a mobile app if you need to, but also obviously SMS. So if you are running a campaign and you don't want to use email, you can use the SMS channel. So yeah, those are the products in a nutshell. I think Pele, before you joined, I mentioned that there is now a PIM available for commerce that came with the acquisition of the B2B commerce software.
Yeah,
it's an add-on. So.
But do they sell that as an add-on to the normal as well now? It's quite a simple. It's quite a simple. If I at least the little bit I've seen of it is quite simple.
Yeah, it is.
Functionality.
Exactly. Yeah, so there are, it's almost like when we do the sales or the presentation, there's like, we described 3 different types of PIMs. There's like your super simple, there's like your full blown in river sands. This is more of in the middle. So it can do enrichment of products. It can do product approval workflows. So similar to Electrolux, I think with Electrolux, you have different phases of product approvals. It starts with, I think, brand, goes to marketing, and then goes all the way to legal, and then you do approvals, and then once it's approved, it then gets pushed into commerce. It has the same sort of functions, but it won't compete with like your big PIMs up there, like in River.
Yeah, or Riversand. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So that's, any questions here before I jump into the feature flagging side of things? Nope. All good.
Oh yeah, I was wondering about the if we have multiple DXPs, Nicola, for the data, could we pull in data from multiple DXPs to feed visitor groups?
Multiple data from the different DXPs.
Yeah, into one
ODP.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So there is so with regards to the profile stitching that happens in the ODP, right? Let's say you got an email as your unique identifier. So if that exists in the DXP, and then DXP1, let's say you've got one in Australia and another in Singapore, you definitely can, but you have to connect the DXP into the one ODP. What we've seen is for visitor intelligence, we have a customer who has a DXP in the UK, a DXP in Australia. Each DXP has its own VI, visitor intelligence, right, not ODP, and each has its own campaign instance, campaign client. So if you have a setup like that, then you can't obviously harmonize. But if you were to use ODP and you just want to have the one instance and then set up multiple DXPs, then you can do your profile stitching, and that should theoretically work.
Yeah, I was thinking in practical case when we're looking at Wilson, where the Wilson site, the Episervice site, like their brand site, will probably have that in one DXP, and then potentially we'll have the security portal in another DXP. But the security portal, it could be interesting to see if they've been visiting, for example, other services on the brand site, because then we can do marketing on the portal for those, for example, something like that.
No, that's good. You've given me the context, because it could be that people have multiple DXPs for GDPR latency reasons, but it could be that they have multiple DXPs because you just want to segregate the different sites.
Yeah.
So if it's the second use case where you have the security site and then the other sites in another DXP, then yeah, it makes sense. If they're all in Australia, both Australian DXPs, it makes sense to have one Australian ODP.
Okay, so that could be possible to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm just referring back to a case with, or we have some customers running Marketo, and there's actually one of the problems that you cannot different countries have their own Marketo instance. But then you can still not harmonize them easily. So because on the global level, it's like you have 20 sales companies, but you would like to see the user, who of the users are all over. And in Marketo, there is not a simple way to do that, because you have to either have them local, or you have to have a global with then segmenting the global one, and that's becomes difficult because of a lot of reasons: billing, profiling, and also pricing. Yeah. Security-wise is also, privilege. Like, are they under European law or Australian law or whatever?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is done by that as well.
Yeah.
GDPR, you can't host, the customer data in EU outside of the EU or CCPA. So that's where we just got to have multiple ODPs because that's PII data.
But as Sophie mentioned, it's really still very interesting to see how it can be leveraged within a regional domain, or like for Europe or for Australia, or
Yeah, so if it is just within Australia, the multiple DXPs in Australia, then it makes sense to have one Australian ODP. So you have that harmonization, you have that one source of data. There's no.
But you need to tag. You still want to tag them that they are from this site and these users belongs to this site and not the other sites.
Well, it depends on what your definition is of a profile. If your definition of a profile is per site, then yeah, you might end up with Pele having 2 profiles because Pele has visited site 1 and Pele has visited site 2. But if your definition is you have a unique identifier for profile and the unique identifier is an email address, for example, then if he has seen Pele in site 1 and Pele in site 2, then it will be merged into that one single profile. Because in ODP, you can harmonize data from different sources. And so essentially when you track page views, so let's say domain A, domain B, it still ends to the one Pele at neteco.com, but you will see your events across both sides or across multiple.
But if you look at it from a site view, you would like to see what they have done on your site.
Yeah,
and that works.
And that's possible. So we've got a reporting engine, so you just go look at all these sites and see the profiles within the site. So yeah. Cool. So what I'll do now is share my screen again. This is on
Sorry for all the questions.
No, all good. I like the session to be interactive. That's good. Can you see my screen again?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So if you don't know yet, you can actually sign up, go to rollouts, optimizely.com/rollouts. I can drop the link and you can just poke around, create your own feature flags, connect it to your site, see how you could release features, not via deployments, but via enabling feature flags, right? So an example use case for, actually, maybe let's take a step back. There's 2 offerings. I've mentioned this earlier. There is the web experimentation. So you just drop a JavaScript and you just change away. Or there's the server-side version of experiments, but the server side allows you to do progressive delivery. So let's say you've built a feature, you have deployed it, but it's not enabled and you're ready to roll it out. And when I say roll out, you don't want it to be available to all your end users. You just want to roll it out to maybe 10% and see how they respond, right? So 90% still see the old feature, the old whatever it was before. What are the use cases? I'm sure you can think of a lot of use cases. Just thinking back when, obviously, let's say MLA, Tien, Question, Sarah, one of the requirements that I remember that the IT guy said was because they wanted for us to redesign the MLA R&D section, and it was a complete redesign. It was the R&D landing page, it was the R&D detail page, the search box, the search block was being changed. It was a bunch of changes, right? And one of the guys from MLA said, is it possible for us to have a toggle so we can turn it on and off for customers? So this is the perfect use case for building feature flags. Now, you can argue that given you already have a CMS, why don't you just build custom, right? You just create a features settings page and just create toggles. Yeah,
but that's how we do it now, right?
Yeah, you definitely can do that. But what you will not have is the progressive rollout. Yeah. So it's really just 100% of zero. What the feature flags allow you to do is to roll it out to, so for example, I've created a feature flag called blog item page redesign, right? You could do targeted delivery. So you could start with 50% and you could do 20%. And you can create metrics for this. So when I say metrics, like for example, you're launching a new feature and you're also wanting to see how they respond to it. Is it actually working or not? So maybe your metric is when you do launch the new version of the R&D, do you get more page views? Do you get more engagement? Is the session longer? Is there, so you can set whatever metrics. And once you've set those metrics, you can then say, okay, for the 10% that it rolled out, we are actually seeing positive results. If it's not, then you just put it back to 0 and then go back to your drawing board. But this allows you to quickly test ideas without investing a lot of development in it. So, and this is where it's a change of mindset, because instead of going through a full cycle discovery and then you go design, a full design again, and then you get sign-offs, you're probably 2 months in already, and then you start to build, I don't know, let's just say you invested 2 weeks, 3 weeks of development, and then you go live. So all of that, and then when you go live, you realize it's not much changes. So if you change that to, why don't we quickly mock it up first before you invest in the build, and then quickly test ideas. There's a concept of painted door tests. I don't know, Tianlei, if you're familiar with the concept of painted door tests.
No, I'm not actually.
So, I mean, technically, which door would you select? Just change the color and see which door they go through.
Yeah, so you can start with those simplest colors. So you can start with as simple as, let's say you're in a payment gateway, like you're implementing payment gateways, and you want to integrate with, let's say, ZipPay, right? You put that as a ZipPay, and then, but without investing in building the integration, you just put it as an option. And then when you see people interacting with it, you see there's just a painted door where you painted it to measure how much engagement you're actually going to get. So when people select the ZipPay and it says, okay, this is coming soon, blah, 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 or you just change your messaging to, then you can, okay, it's worth investing because there's actually been engagement. But if it's there, the option is there, it's not being selected, then there's not no point probably to invest in that. So it's a concept of painting a door for them and see if someone opens. If no one opens, it's probably a lower priority. So it's just more for measuring for prioritization of features.
Yeah, so Nicola, so this is not actually kind of enable a feature, right? Because it's just kind of something we want to present to the customer first and see how they respond to that, or whether they like it or not like it. This is not actually enable a feature that we have already built, right?
So that yes to the concept of painted door tests. So if I say painted door test, that means that's exactly what you just described, is that you're just showing them a mock-up and see what the engagement is going to be before you actually invest time in developing it. But back to the feature flagging. Feature flagging is for proper features that you've already built. So an example here, and I've been involved in another engagement with a partner. They've invested in changing their search to move away from Find, from search and navigation to a completely different search provider. They built it, did some testing over, I don't know, a period of 2 months. They were finally live. And then when they went live with the new search provider, within a few hours, all of their scheduled jobs were stuck. There was performance issues. There was just fires and people weren't happy. They had to contact us to get involved, even though we weren't across it. And then suddenly they had to roll back and remove the code. If they had feature flagged it, then they would have rolled it out slowly, tested it in production. We all know that there's no real test until production. And then obviously if it doesn't work, you could just, not launch, disable the feature without rollback, without deployments. So it's almost like building confidence and deploying with confidence. And it allows you to just do nightly builds if you like. You can do weekly releases and then launch as you go without, the dependency on developers.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Can you think of any use case that you think this will apply to? Feature flagging?
Not actually, because from technical perspective, right? Every new feature will require deployment. So either we use feature flash or we have an app testing to enable or disable that one. We still need a deployment, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's more for teams who want to do more continuous deployments, as opposed to they can't deploy because they have to wait for the entire feature to finish. So it depends on what your development practices are. Some teams prefer that. Some teams want to be able to push every week. It's more because that's their process. It's actually funny. Microsoft looks at this as the modern development practice because it allows you to do smoothly as opposed to having to, right, okay, these are you do a sprint grooming, you've said, okay, I want to deliver 6 tickets within 2 weeks, right? And then within the 2 weeks, one of the tickets had an issue. They want to wait, okay, let's just delay it for another week, as opposed to just go with the 2 weeks, whatever was done, because it's feature flagged, you can still confidently meet your timelines without, massive changing of branching and all that. I don't know if you're familiar with the trunk-based development, but that's what it favors is trunk-based development.
Yeah, so that I assume that there will be kind of a feature in AppCMS for us to control who will be able to visit the new feature. That is the improvement mod, right?
So technically, you can hide it or enable it by using the A/B testing feature.
Yeah, correct, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, it's really, I mean, it comes down to everything about A/B testing. You develop a new form compared to the old form, and then you just test, is this workflow better than the old workflow, or how to fill in or you have a shopping basket, you have a new version of this shopping basket and see, is that one converting better than the old version?
Exactly.
Or 2 different images in an email campaign, which one will they click on the most?
Exactly. It's having like the mindset of a goal-driven deployment as opposed to deploying for the sake of adding new features. It depends. Again, if the customers you're working with are not familiar with experimentation, that constant, quickly, testing ideas, then they probably won't appreciate this. But for customers who have that mindset of having metrics to measure every single time why they're doing things, then this is where it adds value.
Yeah, so I think this is one I'm interested in because we're doing A/B testing for a client, and then right now what we do is use Google Optimize. So we push a JavaScript through Google Optimize and do it that way. So I'm curious to see how this workflow would work out, whether it's better than the flow that we're doing now, and then present it to the client, because the client wouldn't care. They only care that their tests get done, right? So it's more for us that if it's more efficient this way, then we may be able to try this flow out.
The problem though is that they already have the full license of Google 365, and coming with additional cost for them, they might not be so as fond of.
That's true. The only thing is they have different discussions around Google products versus Microsoft, so that might be something that they want to explore.
But one of the things that I've seen with AAG, for instance, they have A/B testing, but not Optimizely. They selected another product, or Resolution selected something else.
They used to use VWO plugin, but now they use Google Optimize as well.
Okay, but anyway, it's a long. It basically destroys the speed tag, the Google Web Vitals. Totally destroys it. So, how much impact does this do?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? So this is where, and it's got nothing to do with the product, right? It's the way you do experiments. If you're doing it web version, so back to that diagram that I showed to you, this guy, right?
JavaScript impact. Then the question is, how much is that doing the change on the client, or is it a node server in front of it that does it?
It's on the server side. So that's why there's 2 offerings with Optimizely. One, which is very similar to VWO or A/B Tasty or Google Optimize, is that it just is the nature of the beast, where for the variation to take place, when you load the URL, and then the JavaScript loads from your A/B testing provider. It then manipulates the DOM. So that's when, and it's render blocking. It's got to be render blocking because you have to see the variation. Whereas with running it server side, that calculation, that all happens within the server side, and then you can set configurations, right? You want to just check poll every 5 minutes. So essentially, no latency from a client side perspective because it's already part of the entire request. The first request, you'll see straight away what it is, as opposed to an added request for web. And this is where people who don't want to do that render blocking, but also use the other capabilities such as progressive delivery, they go with full stack.
But how does that impact then? Because I mean, you have, when you have today resources coming from a search request or from a data lookup or from the product catalog, or I mean, you need to do all these micro or do not caching and so on. Otherwise, you get too long delay. But how does the impact, or do you gain better impact by using Optimizely on the server side?
Yeah,
because they have their own caching stack, and how does it cache over all the servers? So I mean, if you have then 6 front-end servers, is the cache or that work done in Optimizely, is that orchestrated over all the front-end servers, or does it happen again and again on each server?
I have a slide to answer your question, but let me just load it up.
Distributed cache versus local cache.
Yeah, so I can tell you that from a CDN perspective, they're using Akamai, and then the origin is AWS. I'm just trying to look for the deck. Just give me 2 seconds.
And then they use the JavaScript execution in Akamai.
Yes, so Edge is what they call it, Edge at the CDN. Yeah. So this is where Optimizely, the former Optimizely brand, beats the other experimentation products, is because of the Edge and the CDN, and they also allow for you to even host your JS as close as possible. But you have obviously do some sort of integration. But yeah, so we have a solution for that performance Edge. But if you really want to take it further, do full stack because it's server side. Yeah. I have the architecture slide for it, but I could not find it right now. It actually is it shows you the flow of things from AWS through to Akamai, through to the client side, and then from the client side, the tracking that happens. Because obviously when you load the variation and you want to track like clicks, the scrolling, length of time on the page, you have to be able to measure the metrics. And so, but I could not find it here. Bear with me a moment. I'm pretty sure it's, I think it's this one. While I'm loading this, any other questions? I think we've got 7 minutes. No? Okay, I got it open. I'm sharing the screen. So these are the 2 different versions, right? We've got the web, which is the client side. So let me just use this first, and then we'll do the full stack. So this is the customer website. You inject the script, right? And which is essentially requested from the CDN in Akamai, pulled from the S3 bucket in Amazon Web Services, which is a compiled JS file. So essentially, when you go into the interface, when you're changing your experiment, you're creating your experiments, changing the colors, changing the layout, that all compiles a JavaScript file that then gets pushed into S3, and then it's pulled from the CDN. And then you can actually configure how often the pull is. And then from a tracking perspective, it goes back to AWS in an EC2 environment. And then we've got a results dashboard. So the UI essentially is the Google App Engine. So that's web. Full stack operates slightly differently. So it's the same thing from a backend perspective. So Google App Engine, AWS, CDN is Akamai. So this is the Edgecast that I mentioned earlier. This is the an optional one if you want to increase further the load. Sorry, so a better load. And then customer website, essentially everything is SDK, which means everything runs on the backend. It's server side. So there's no latency from because the client side is an extra request to the server, this one actually happens on the server side.
And how does this module work then in combination with the Cloudflare stuff? Because you have Cloudflare today. Do you need to replace Cloudflare to Akamai for the whole site?
No, at the moment we are staying on Akamai. It doesn't really matter if you're on the DXP in Cloudflare. That request to, so if I go back to web, this one, the request to this JS will obviously not hit the DXP. This request will go to Akamai instead of Cloudflare.
And is the experimentation working as well in China? No. Yes. No.
Good question. I don't know the reason to that. The answer to that. I have a feeling it does. I think that the guys that are talking about China, but I need to get back to you on that.
Cool. Super.
The other thing that I think we've got 4 minutes. I just want to quickly just show this is, I think, pretty cool as well. So I mentioned earlier, and it'd be great to know, Tien Lei, your experience with Google Optimize. So this is something that's also available there. But we have 2 algorithms that are available. So there's a multi-armed bandit. I thought this is pretty cool. What this does is it maximizes the number of conversions during an experiment, right? Let's say you've got your experiment is saying, okay, the higher the conversion, the more it becomes a winner. What it does is, if I go next, right, you'll see that a standard A/B test, and you have 4 variations, let's say blue, purple, pink, and yellow. These are 4 variations. You'll notice that the distribution of traffic is the same. It's equally distributed. Whereas with multi-armed bandit, it knows that, hey, within the first 1,000 or 2,000, we know that the winner within the first 2,000 is the blue variation. So after the 2,000, it then distributes more traffic to that blue variation because there's more conversions here, and it does keep that. So there's AI included to determine the traffic allocation to the different variations, instead of a flat 25% all the time. So by the time you're finished your experiments, your total conversions would be higher with this one versus here, because you have to wait 20 to get to the 20,000. The other algorithm is Stats Accelerator. What this is it actually shrinks the time. Like, you don't have to wait for 30 days. If you're running your experiment for 30 days, the moment it knows, hey, it's actually this is a winner, for sure. You don't need data scientists because of its the AI embedded on it. It's then able to say, okay, variation B, there's more people converting here. So what we'll do is we'll finish the experiment and just declare a winner straight away.
That's cool. So I think, we're running out of time, and something would be interesting for me to understand next time is also, so I see, they have the license for Optimize. That's a different thing, right? And I see the potential benefit is the speed or performance of the web not being affected, for example. But the other issue that they would have if they switch is because we track all of the KPIs on GTM now, so button clicks and things like that. So now if we do it with Optimizely, that means we have to redo all that tracking within Epi, and that's double effort. So I just want to understand more of that process. If it doesn't make sense for Electrolux, then it might make sense for another project that we're working from scratch to enable all that tracking from the beginning, so that adopting this would be easier.
Okay, so what I'll do, and obviously if you want to drill into this, it will not be me who will do that session. It will be someone like Steve, who's an expert in this. So yeah, I'll put that as a to-do, Tien, to put you in touch with our experimentation people.
Oh, great, thanks.
All right.
Fantastic, Nicola. Thank you very, very much.
Cool. Well, I
Love to see
we've
you.
agreed. Yeah, no, it was good to see you as well. I saw you on chat on the developer meetup the other day, Tale.
Yeah, I didn't dare to say anything.
Yeah. So yeah, for next session, it'd be great to for you guys to collate the topics that you want to drill into, and yeah, hopefully this was useful.
This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah, see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.